It was supposed to be a fun weekend getaway in the countryside with my college friends, taking a break from our stressful, busy lives. We were driving for hours through winding back roads flanked by rolling green hills, quaint little farmhouses, and dense forests. The warm afternoon sun streamed through the trees, making everything seem cheerful and inviting. Out of nowhere, my adventurous friend Evan had the brilliant idea to take a detour and explore an abandoned town he claimed was just up ahead. We still had plenty of daylight left, so we impulsively decided why not stop for a bit to check it out. We were feeling carefree and daring. After several more miles, we rolled into a town that looked completely deserted. The empty streets were eerily quiet, like time had simply stopped. The buildings were dilapidated with peeling paint, broken windows, and sagging porches. Vines crawled up the crumbling brick walls, reclaiming the structures. Many of the old stores had faded signs barely legible above their doors, hinting at what they once were: a general store, a saloon, a telegraph office. Everything was blanketed in a layer of dirt and gloom. The place felt heavy and foreboding, like the whole town was holding its breath. We joked about how it was straight out of a horror movie as we parked and got out to explore. Against my better judgment, we decided to split up to cover more ground. As I wandered alone down the cracked sidewalk of the main street, the sinking feeling in my gut got worse. I felt unseen eyes watching me from every angle. The shadows seemed to morph and move in my peripheral vision. My footsteps echoed eerily in the complete silence. I could have sworn I heard whispers swirling around me in a language I didn't understand. The wind picked up and shutters banged, making me jump. I quickened my pace, wanting to get back to the safety of my friends in our car as fast as possible. This place felt wrong. When I turned the key in the ignition, the engine only sputtered weakly. I tried again and again, each time the car making the same useless clicking sound. My chest tightened and my hands started to sweat. We were stranded here as the sun quickly started to set. I felt utterly alone and terrified in the ghost town now. The others returned to the car, laughing and reminiscing about the creepy buildings they explored, until they saw the panic on my face. I urgently told them the car was dead and we needed to get out of town immediately. But of course, none of our phones had service in the rural area. The narrow, winding road stretched on for miles in either direction with no cars passing by to flag down. Night was falling fast. We were trapped. The lighthearted mood completely evaporated as we huddled closer around the car. The shadows grew longer and darker, swallowing the town. Strange noises echoed around us. Scraping, scratching noises like claws against wood. We jumped at every little creak and groan. Our nerves were completely frayed. And then we started to see them. Shadowy humanoid figures lurking behind broken windows and around corners. Their eyes seemed to glow as they watched us. I'll never forget that piercing red glare coming from the decaying building, sending chills down my spine. We stayed awake all night, shivering and clinging to each other, terrified to sleep. The paranormal activity grew as the hours dragged on. More creeping shadows. Disembodied cries and whispers swirling around us. The hair on the back of my neck prickled and stood up. I was certain one of those sinister ghosts or lurking creatures would snatch us if we let our guard down for even a moment. We talked in hushed, trembling voices about what could have happened in this town to make it so haunted. Some mining accident, a cult ritual gone wrong, a gruesome murder spree? Nothing we came up with sounded crazy anymore. I no longer believed in ghosts and ghouls wandering the earth, but in the suffocating darkness of that night it felt foolish not to. Exhausted and almost delirious by sunrise, we knew we had to escape while we still could. We pushed the car manually until it finally rolled just enough for me to start the ignition once more. The entities shrieked and wailed, an awful bone-chilling sound as we tore away, spraying dust behind us. I didn't dare look back. I just gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. We drove for what felt like an eternity until we stumbled across a dingy gas station on the highway. I nearly collapsed in relief once we arrived. I've never felt a place so welcoming and safe. My friends and I made a solemn pact to never speak of that night again. The horrific memories still haunt my dreams to this day. Just thinking about that cursed ghost town makes my heart race and palms sweat all over again. Some doors are better left unopened, some places better left undiscovered. The needle on my gas gauge had been fluttering with empty for the last 20 miles or so on this lonely stretch of highway. I had been driving for nearly 7 hours straight on my way to visit family for the holidays. My eyes were weary and I needed to get out and move around. Up ahead, an ancient billboard advertised a truck stop at the next exit, so I took the off-ramp. hoping to refuel and buy a quick snack before continuing my journey through the night. The truck stop looked like something straight out of a horror movie. The parking lot was bathed in harsh fluorescent lighting, illuminating the peeling paint and oil stains. Only a few other vehicles were parked outside the main building, which had seen better days. The windows were covered in a thick film of dirt and dead bugs. The place gave off bad energy, almost like it was daring me to come inside. My gut told me to keep driving, but the fuel light blinking angrily on my dash argued otherwise. With a sigh, I pulled up to the closest pump. Inside, the air was heavy with the stench of stale cigarettes. The lights flickered erratically, casting ominous shadows across the store. Behind the counter, an elderly man with heavily lined face stared blankly at a tiny TV, paying me no attention as I walked by. In the far corner sat a rough-looking biker type dressed in leather and jeans, with tattoos covering his arms and neck. He slowly sipped black coffee while glaring at me silently with icy blue eyes. I avoided eye contact and made my way quickly to the drinks cooler. After grabbing a soda, I headed to the filthy restroom to wash up before getting back on the road. The mirror was coated in dust and grime, the sink rust-stained and dripping. The silence inside was almost oppressive compared to the constant hum of the lights. As I dried my hands under the hand dryer, a loud bang echoed from one of the stalls, making me jump. It sounded like someone had punched or kicked the door angrily. My heart began pounding in my chest. Had someone been in there the whole time? Part of me wanted to get out of there immediately, but morbid curiosity got the best of me. I crept over and pushed open the stall door slowly, ready to retreat. But there was no one inside, just an empty toilet and chipped tile floor, with a few small pools of what looked like blood. My mouth went dry and I stumbled backwards, nearly crashing into the biker who had been sitting in the corner earlier. He stood blocking the restroom exit, arms crossed menacingly over his barrel chest. I mumbled something about forgetting my credit card and slipped past him. The cool night air was a relief as I hurried to my car and locked the doors. That truck stop was bad news. I needed to get back on the open highway where I could blend into the steady stream of traffic. The tires squealed on the concrete as I pulled out of the parking lot, checking the rearview mirror obsessively for any sign of that biker. But the road behind me remained pitch black and empty. After a few miles, I began to relax, taking deep breaths to slow my racing heart. Maybe I had just let my imagination get the best of me. The further I got from that truck stop, the more at ease I became. The radio played softly as I cruised along under a moonless sky full of stars. My phone showed no signal, but at least there were no other cars around at this late hour. Or so I thought. Suddenly, bright headlights flooded my rearview mirror, coming up fast. The car tailgated inches from my bumper, blinding me. I sped up, but so did they, flashing their beams aggressively. As they pulled alongside me, I realized it was no car at all but a massive semi-truck, painted all black. The truck edged closer, forcing me toward the shoulder. I could barely make out the silhouette of the driver sitting high above me in the cab. The headlights flicked off, enveloping us in darkness on the narrow two-lane road. My heart pounded as the truck roared its engine next to me, like a challenge. 85 miles per hour, and still it wouldn't pass. A deer could total my small car at this speed. Gripping the wheel with sweaty palms, I prayed for a stoplight, an exit, anything to escape. Just then, the semi lurched into my lane, clipping my bumper and sending me into a skid. The tires screamed as I fought to regain control, hyper-aware of the steep ditch along the shoulder. At the last second, I straightened out and floored it past 100 miles per hour. Still, the black truck stuck to my tail, taunting me. I knew these rural backroads well and frantically tried to form a plan. Up ahead, a dirt road split off from the highway. It was risky, but my only chance to lose him. I slowed slightly as if I were giving up. At the last second, I cranked the wheel hard to the right, fishtailing onto the gravel path. My car bounced violently on the potholed road as branches scraped the doors. In the rear view, I glimpsed the semi-blast past, unable to make the sharp turn. After 100 yards or so, I killed the headlights and swung behind a thick stand of trees, their branches concealing me like a canopy. I sat motionless, watching the highway through the leaves. It wasn't long before a set of headlights crawled by, searching. It was the black semi, moving at a predatory pace. The driver's door hung open, but I could not see his face, only darkness. He continued along the road, inching dangerously close to my hiding place before finally driving off in apparent frustration, tires spitting gravel behind him. I stayed frozen for a good 15 minutes, palms sweating as I kept my foot poised over the gas pedal, ready to take off. Finally convinced the coast was clear, I eased back onto the paved road using no lights, paranoid that maniac trucker could still be lurking nearby. The road stayed empty, but I drove on edge for several miles, knuckles white on the wheel, until I reached the glowing lights of the first small town. The busy all-night gas station was a welcome sight. I pulled in near the entrance, comforted by the handful of other cars fueling up, people coming and going. For now, at least, I had somehow escaped that truck stop of terror, but those harrowing events would leave me shaken for a long time to come. It was mid-July, the summer after freshman year of college, when my friends and I decided to go on a grand old American road trip. We had just finished up our first year of school and were eager for adventure, looking to celebrate our newfound freedom. There were 4 of us total crammed into my beat-up old sedan: me, Jake, Lexi, and Trent. We plotted out an epic cross-country route that would take us through small towns and big cities alike. We wanted to see it all and make memories to last a lifetime. Our trip started off amazing, visiting famous landmarks and tacky roadside attractions. We took silly photos everywhere we went and stayed up late swapping stories in cramped motel rooms. But by the 3rd week on the road, we were yearning for something exciting to break up the monotony. That's when we first heard about the Bridge of No Return. We were stopped at a little hole-in-the-wall diner in rural Iowa, looking over our map and trying to decide where to head next. Some old-timers sat nearby at the counter, overhearing our conversation. One of them turned and addressed us, telling us not to miss the Bridge of No Return just a few miles up the county road. He proceeded to recount the bridge's dark history. Back in the 1950s, a loaded school bus had plummeted from the narrow one-lane bridge, plunging into the river below. Nearly every child on board drowned that day. Locals blamed the antiquated bridge, saying it was too rickety and unsafe. But the county never rebuilt it, simply putting up warning signs. In the decades since, many travelers reported strange occurrences when trying to cross the bridge. Whispers swirled that it was intensely haunted by the ghosts of the drowned children. Our interest was instantly piqued. We just had to check it out. We eagerly followed the man's directions, soon coming upon the bridge jutting out over a wide, muddy river. It was even creepier than I imagined. Wooden planks weathered gray from age, a thick fog swirling around it obscuring the far end. For a moment we hesitated, feeling uneasy, but our reckless curiosity pushed us forward. I slowly drove the car out onto the bridge, tires creaking against the boards. The fog closed around us, and I relied on the painted lines to stay centered in the single lane. An oppressive silence engulfed us, like all sound had been suddenly snatched away. The air itself felt heavy. We were halfway across when the car sputtered and died. No matter how many times I turned the key, the engine refused to turn over. Swallowing down my rising panic, I peered through the windshield into the gray nothingness surrounding us. The silence grew even heavier, pressing against my eardrums. But then, I began to hear them. Groans and cries echoed softly through the fog. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. The mournful wails sent a chill down my spine. My friends and I exchanged terrified glances. The air inside the car grew icy cold. One by one, shadowy figures emerged from the gloom. Their tattered, old-fashioned clothes hung limply from skeletal frames. Faces gaunt and pale, eyes hollow. These were ghosts. They shuffled towards us, desperately reaching out with bony fingers. Their chilling voices pleaded and cried against the glass. Inside, we huddled together, trembling, paralyzed by shock and fear. Finally, I snapped out of it. "We've got to run for it," I yelled. Flinging open the doors, we sprinted into the mist blindly. The ghosts clawed at us with their icy grasps as we ran past. I focused on the feeling of my feet slamming against the wooden bridge, using it to ground me. Just when it seemed like we'd be trapped in that supernatural fog forever, we burst out into daylight on the other side. Not wanting to see if the ghosts had followed us, we sprinted down the road until the bridge was out of view. At last we stopped, doubled over, gasping to catch our breath. The haunting cries still echoed in my mind. We all had a solemn realization that day. We had toyed with forces beyond our control and escaped, but those ghosts remained trapped for eternity. It was only sheer luck that let us flee that bridge unaffected. From then on, we understood there were some things that we were never meant to meddle with. Our time on the Bridge of No Return changed us, replacing our cocky recklessness with caution and respect. We learned that local legends and ghost stories sometimes hold dark kernels of truth. For the remainder of our road trip, we stuck to the main highways, too rattled to seek out any more paranormal encounters. That brush with the supernatural had satisfied our curiosity permanently.